I really want to say it is my honor and privilege to be able to introduce Anna Kirah, who is the Chief Experience Officer at Making Waves. And in preparing for today, one of the things I did was I wanted to re-watch her TED Talk. For anyone who hasn't seen it, I highly recommend it. Anna talks about silent heroes in 2012. It's a TED Talk from Oslo. And actually, I think it's really fair to say that in our industry, I would view Anna as one of our silent heroes. She has successfully opened the eyes of many large organizations to the power of observing human behavior. She's really changed the way Microsoft looks at design through using real people and real stories to inform great design and create really great experiences for people. As we saw before, she comes from a background in anthropology and psychology, but it's also interesting to note she's lived and worked through different parts of the world and across the world. And I think reflecting on Anna's life journey that she's been through, it reminds me of two things that I think we really need to keep front of mind in the work that we're doing in terms of creating fantastic experiences for people. Firstly, I think we really need to think about being open to people. As UX practitioners, we can't do it alone. We need to be open to people from different backgrounds, different disciplines, different cultures, and basically different experiences. The second thing I think we need to be talking about more is around human behavior. I think we've had some fantastic talks over the past 3 days around technology, techniques, tools, skills, etc. But I think we need to be talking a lot more around human behavior. So please open your minds and welcome Anna.
And I'm going to welcome our AV guy who decided he's been texting with his brother about a special little thing to try and get the resolution on my computer to work properly. So I thought that would be very fair to let him do that, because then your experience from the visual side will be a little bit better. And if not, you guys can bear with it. I'm sure we've had this happen before. I have a joke after all those years at Microsoft. I don't remember one time presenting internally in the company or externally where technology didn't fail me. So this is normal. We all work in the field. Let's see how it works. Nope. Thanks for trying. Okay, so I was asked to present at this conference, and I had been to UXPA many years back. I think it was 2002, and I didn't really enjoy myself. So I was a little, concerned about coming to this conference, but I thought, okay, I'll try it. And let me tell you, you have all inspired me. Every single presentation I've been to, I wasn't bored 1 second. And that's a first for me at conferences in general. And I really want to thank you for that. You've been truly inspiring. And so I've chosen to share with you my dancing heart. And let me try and explain that to you. This year's theme has been about motivation, and next year's theme is on simplicity. And these two things go very well. They go quite together in a similar way to the outstanding presentation we had yesterday on music and innovation. Experience design and innovation is like a dance. When we are in a flow in our work, it feels like we're dancing. And to the eyes of an observer, our work is quite simple. Yet we have spent years practicing our skills and the art of creating meaningful, relevant, useful, and desirable services and products for the people we serve. We're always moving around, in and out, and yes, sometimes we step on toes. Have you ever done that in your company? I have a dancing heart, and that dance is created by the meetings I've had with people throughout my life. Each person is connected to the other, and through these connections, people have given me the gift of sharing their thoughts, their actions, their norms, and their representations. They have shared their aspirations and motivations, which have been applied to the design of products and services across this world. And this talk is in tribute to all the people who I've met through my life and my career so far. My family, my friends, my colleagues, my customers, and most important of all, my informants. For these are the people I serve and who you serve. Without them, we cannot create our solutions. They are the true heroes of our stories. Creating services and products with these people is my motivation. As I said earlier, these past few days have inspired me, and I've sat through these presentations and I've spoken with many of you. I've met old colleagues. I met Ted Boren, and we went on the London Eye, where I met by accident someone who went to the same high school as me at a boarding school in Massachusetts. And I've heard the dancing hearts of many of you. Zarla Luden and Michael Dahinia, is that right? Good enough? Close enough? Both of you made my heart beat even stronger. And there are many more of you in the room. I just don't have the time to acknowledge you all, or I wouldn't be able to go on with my presentation. Over the time, I've seen some fairly dramatic changes in our field, evidenced also at this conference. Some changes have to do with adopting new methodologies, among them ethnography. I remember a time when that was a 4-letter word. But the most important change, I believe, is happening with our mindsets. And I'm going to come back to this as I share my own experiences with experience design, usability, and innovation. But now, as an anthropologist, I have to begin with a story. And after listening with you these last 3 days, I decided on this particular story, and it goes like this. This is Oslo, Norway. It's where I live. And this is my office in Oslo, Norway. And this is my train that I take back and forth between the city and the rural countryside where I live. And this is my train station. And this is where the story really begins. Because in May of this year, it was very cold, rainy, and windy when I sat in my car ready to drive away from the 5 o'clock commuter train. All the commuters who got off at Harastua, my stop, had disappeared off the platform. They either walk home through the woods, or they take their cars or their bicycles. In the wintertime, we ski to it, but it's not winter at that time. And there was only one person left on the platform, and he didn't fit in. He looked to be around 80 years old, and he was dressed in similar clothes in the 40s, very much like the man on your left. He looked ever so confused, and I just couldn't let him stand there. The other thing he was carrying was a balalaika, quite large as the one you see on your right in that picture. And I decided there's something wrong here. This is a true story. I'm not making it up. So I approached him, and he approached me. He had looked confused, and he came up to me like this, and he said, "Are you the one who is picking me up?" And I looked at him, and I said, "Well, no, I don't think so, but can I help you?" And he said, and I've got the name because I always forget the name. He put out his hand, stood very tall. In his hat, he was dressed just like that. And he said, "My name is Dr. Zetnau, and I am the chief surgeon of neurosurgery at the main hospital in Norway." And at that point, an alarm bell went off. But I said, "Very nice to meet you. Can I help you?" And he said, "Well, I am here to meet my dear old friend, Dr. So-and-so, who lives here, and he hasn't picked me up." And I said, "Okay, let me see if I can help." So then I went to my mobile phone, and I looked up, and I could not find this person's name, but I found another person with the same last name. And I called that person, and it was the son of his friend. His friend had been dead for 20 years. And the son didn't live in my village and lived over an hour and a half away. And he was very, very upset because Apparently his mother still lived in the village, but there had been no invitation on this day. And he thought it was the 17th of May, which is our national day, and it wasn't the 17th of May. It was near the 17th of May, but it was not the 17th of May. So I decided I got to do something here, because I couldn't just have him stand there and wait for the next train back to Oslo. And it was cold and windy, so I asked him if he would like to come to my little cabin, one-room cabin, and stay with me until the next train. And he liked that. And so I have a very tiny car, so you can imagine what it was like to put this balalaika into the car and get this man into the car. And he went in and out of clearness. So he did have dementia, but it wasn't all the time. And he actually at one point commented on how difficult it was to get old because you start forgetting things. And at times he wasn't sure who he was or who I was as he was sitting in my cabin, and I gave him the coffee. And what I did was I disappeared into another room for 2 minutes. And I was a little worried about leaving him there sitting in an orange chair, but I did. And I called the train company. And I said, I have a problem. Will you make sure that he gets safely to Oslo? But I'm still worried. What do we do? And they said, well, we will take him. You, as a clinical psychologist, you can observe him a little bit more, and if you think he's not going to make it, we'll make sure the police come and pick him up. So I was calm about this. I went back out to the doctor, and I said, well, of course I will get you on this next train. And here's where the real story happened. Because I brought him to the train station, and our trains, you should know, are extremely old on this line. Extremely old, so he fit the train better than we do when we're going to this train. And I'll be talking about the train at the end of the entire presentation again. But what happened was the train pulled in, and out came 2 conductors and the driver of the train. And they were all in full uniform with their caps. And they lined up and said, are you Dr. Zeklau? And he lit up like a light. Yes, I am. And they said, welcome on board, sir. Please come on board we were going to take you to Oslo. At this point, I was crying. It was such a beautiful moment to watch them, each person lining up and introducing him. They put him in first class and took care of him. And what ended up happening was the son of his friend drove to Oslo and picked him up and brought him back to his home. Who was he? He was indeed the chief surgeon of this hospital, the chief of neurosurgery, but he was also a very famous balalaika player, and you can find his music on YouTube. And in addition, he was an Olympic sharpshooter and was the national champion of Norway. So it was quite a powerful moment for me when I found out that he was, in fact, this person. And I had found him on my little village train stop. And you must be wondering why this matters. And I will come back to that. So just let that story hang for a while. So what is this people-centered approach? What is it? Well, I have to begin with a confession. I really, really dislike the word user. And one of the things that really inspired me at this conference, okay, I did hear the word. In fact, I just heard it at the end here. But I heard this word used far less than before at these conferences. And I'm truly grateful on behalf of all the people I have met. Honestly, this is really true. The only people I know who consider themselves to be users are a group of drug users I have worked with on a project. I thought I would share with you a quick search I did on the word user this morning. And to be fair, because Yahoo's out there, I also did Yahoo. I did Bing, Yahoo, and Google. That's fair enough? Am I missing somebody big? Oh, yes, but you will have to do that for me. This is the first picture. This is Bing's users, Yahoo's users, Google's users? Are these really the people we are building and creating services for? Faceless, emotionless things? Okay, so we have a little bit of color, but that's about it. The word user blinds us. It implies we know what we are going to create, and it limits our ability to think beyond a user or beyond our products and services. And maybe that's what we need to be doing. And what about everyone who's not using our products and services? Because users generally are our customers. And if we just go to our customers, how are we going to understand the people who choose not to use our products or don't even know about our products and services? The best way to increase market share is to understand the people who are not using our products and services. Doesn't that make any sense? Yeah. And then finally, and thirdly, and I think the one that upsets me the most around this is the word separates us from and allows us to ignore what is important. And that is the sticky, sticky mess of everyday people in their everyday lives. It's always been about people. And these are some of the people that I have have been my informants. I'm not going to be talking about Howard and Martha today, but you will hear about Howard and Martha if you see the TED Talk. And Howard and Martha are the second to your left, from your left, on the top row. Very important people in my life. Now, it's always been about the people, and the reason it is the multitude of roles people have in their everyday and not so everyday lives. And your product and service is a minute detail in their life. It is not their life. We are sons and daughters, brothers and sisters, mothers and fathers, friends and colleagues, customers and service providers, and the list goes on. And innovation begins only when we remove our blinders and focus on the aspirations and motivations of people in their everyday lives. What is meaningful to them? What is relevant to them? We can build whatever wonderful or magical service or product we want for them, but if we do not meet their needs, we have failed. And while I'm at it, I might as well say that the easiest way to meet these needs is to be humble enough to build with them and not for them. Be humble enough to build with them and not for them. And now, just a quick note about personas, since that was a topic for the unconference this year. I'm sorry I wasn't there, but I did read the Twitters. Here's my 2 cents. As long as we are talking about personas as fake people, often based on numbers, on averages that take a hell of a lot of time to obtain, analyze, and calculate, then I'm completely against them. Why in God's name can we think that this is more important than understanding the life of a real person, which changes all the time? Our attempt at creating products and services for fake people is a blatant act of disrespect and disregard for humanity, both the people we serve and also the people we work with, because we believe the people we work with cannot understand real people. These types of personas do not describe the richness and stickiness of reality. And this is because what people do and what people need is so heavily embodied in why and how they need it. It is in the personal stories behind the whys and hows that we relate to our informants and can relay the message further in the design process. I thought I would just show you a little bit about that and how we create personas. I'm on the board of Design Without Borders and also advise on our projects. And this one is from Uganda, in the very north of Uganda. There is no electricity there. There is no water there. And it is a project. It was in collaboration with the United Nations Food Program. So I have to say I disagree a little bit with Matthias, who started this conference, when he said that user experience is not in the business of saving lives. I would argue very much against what he said. We can save lives, and we do save lives. And you who are working in health services, in safety and security, you're saving lives. You don't know what life you're saving. And in some of your other products and services, maybe somebody's having a heart attack and you made it easier for them to call, or maybe you got them easier to finish their work. I had a tendency when I worked at Microsoft to end up in hospitals. That's true. And it was like the last thing I did once, and this is a true story with Dennis Wixon, my dear God, where I'm literally being rushed into an operating room, and I'm on the phone with Dennis because he needs some file, and I'm trying to work through that. So maybe those things save lives. Don't underestimate your value. This is a picture of some of the research, and of course in our research we're telling stories and the problems facing these people in a remote area. We work with them and we facilitate their stories, and the way we ended up, we used real people. We told their stories to explain to the United Nations they had a problem because they couldn't group all of them into one group, that they had different types of categories. And the first category is the people we call the now people. They literally don't know if they're going to survive the next minute. The woman you see in the picture on your left, she has children who are starving to death. I saw the children. I held those children. And she doesn't know where she's going to get her next meal. She can't be thinking about the future. And she can't be learning about financial literacy, which is what they wanted to teach these people. The tomorrow people, they have enough food for today, so they're starting to think about how are they going to get enough food or find something to do that gives them money in order to live through the next day. And the future people, they're still so fragile, but they have been able to save enough to save a bar of soap because her dream, she has a dream. She's the first one who has a dream. She wants to open a little store, and she shows us where she wants the store, and there's a dirty piece of soap that she's been saving to be able to sell that piece of soap. And then comes those that have managed to come out of this and have a bit more sustainability around their lives. And what we were able to show the United Nations through this, of course, is that those three categories of now, tomorrow, and future, in the course of a second, you shift into those three categories. Whereas our real job is how do we move all three categories over closer to sustainable? Because it doesn't help to move now to tomorrow, when tomorrow can be a now again in the next second. Now, I skip around a lot. I tend to do this. I wanted to tell you a little bit about my own personal path, that dancing heart to a people-centric approach. And it starts for me in my childhood. The most important tool I use in my everyday life, I learned in daycare center. Growing up in Asia, being placed in Asian schools, I developed a survival skill in order to make friends. And that was I had to understand these children from their perspective and not my own. And that's exactly what I do when I work with my customers, is to try and help them understand their customers or their non-customers, but how to understand people from their perspective and not from the company's perspectives. How did I end up doing this? Well, I'm going to be really honest with you. I really believe this came from fear. I was terrified. Can you imagine what it was like being 2 years old, being put into a Chinese daycare center? It was tough. And I think what came from that was ability to learn how to scan. And what scanning is, and I don't think you can learn it if you've been in your safe little cupboard in your office. You can only do that by going out and exploring. And what it happens is you scan. Because you're scared, you're on alert. You're looking. Does that make sense? And it's sort of like, and I need my purse because I actually wrote out a song I have to sing to you. Where did I put my purse? That's a good thing. Well, maybe I'll try and sing it without knowing it. I have no idea where I put my purse. Isn't that great? Oh, well, I wrote out this great song for you. I really want you to hear the song. I know I'm not a normal UX person. I would be sitting up there much more seriously. But I take my job very seriously. So let's see if I put it in here. Or did I leave it upstairs? Okay. So this scanning behavior, I think, also goes very closely with this understanding of the other perspective. And the reason I'm making such a big deal about it is because I think it's really very similar to Sesame Street. Now, if any of you have had children or you're young enough to remember this, there was this song called One of These Things Is Not Like the Other, and it goes like this. One of these things, I can't sing, is not like the other. One of these things does not belong. Can you tell which thing is not like the others by the time I finish this song? And that's, thank you. So that's what scanning is. And if you've developed this from childhood, you're constantly scanning. You can't not scan. And that's what I do. I go around wherever I am, and I'm scanning, and I'm looking in the room and trying to find, for example, earlier today I was looking for the apple geek. You couldn't just have an apple. You had to be kind of geeky. And there were none. Now, how does this work? I thought I would tell you. Last year I was involved in the research used to redesign the Oslo International Airport from the passenger perspective. But the key thing to understand here is what was happening behind the scenes was that the HR department wanted their people to be better trained at understanding passengers. So it wasn't to do a project for the company. It was to involve them enough so that they would be able to do these kinds of things on their own. After all, the people who work at the airport in administration, they are passionate about airports. They've been working in it a long time, but they don't always get it right. So on the very first day scanning the area, I found 4 pickpockets. And that surprised both the police and the hospital administration. They knew they had the problem, but they hadn't spotted them. Scanning behavior. One of these people doesn't fit in, you know. Then what happened was we discovered something quite surprising. And that was right after security at the Norwegian Oslo airport. You can go either left or right. If you go right, you go through some doors that it's a point of no return. And left, you can wander the whole airport. Now, what happens is people stand, and the very first question out of their mouths is, where's my gate? So the first thing we had to do was observe that there were a lot of people standing around doing nothing right after security. That didn't make a lot of sense. And we started asking them why, and everyone said, well, we're looking for our gate. Well, there was no indication of where their gates were, because the way the Oslo airport works is everything to your left is domestic and everything to your right is international. So you're crossing a boundary if you go through those doors. And that's very important, because if you pass that boundary, you can't come back. And the only reason they have this boundary, you need to understand by asking lots of whys, is because Norwegians like their alcohol. This is true, because right afterwards is a tax-free shop. And they're afraid that the domestics, they will figure out, the people going into domestic sites will figure out a way to get the international passengers to buy them a bottle of alcohol, and then we'll sell it to them, and no, we can't have this. Right? But what they didn't understand was every day, they have the statistic, they didn't even look at it. Every day, over 100 people go through that gate by mistake and end up missing their plane. And why do they go through it? Are they after the bottle of alcohol? Were any of them after the bottle of alcohol? No. They wanted the cart that was over on that side that isn't on the left side. They thought their gate was through there because they didn't understand domestic international. Even Norwegians don't get it, what that means. And that's partially because it's a very long country, and then it's Scandinavia, Norway, or is Scandinavian international, is it not? Is Europe international? Is it not? And Schengen. How many of you know what the Schengen is? The whole rule around this airport is around Schengen. And if you don't know what Schengen is, you're really in trouble here. And all of these levels were based on the airport's perspective, right? Not the passenger perspective. And we helped them understand this. And the interesting thing was, all they had to do was ask the employees of the airport because they knew all of these problems. And he became one of their heroes because he could not only explain it, he had lots of ideas and solutions around this, but nobody had ever come to him. And he stood in the same place 8 hours a day, 5 days a week for 3 years and knew exactly what the problems were and had thought about this, but nobody ever came to ask him. So he was pretty darn excited when we involved the employees in this process. Another story for you. This is my daughter, Maria. I celebrated last week her 25th birthday. As you can see there, she's quite a bit younger. She's 2 years old. And she liked 2 things when she was 2 years old. She liked Mama's chicken soup. Do any of you make chicken soup that takes 12 hours to make? Oh, Ted, thank you. See, Ted does that. Ted Boren, thank you. A lot of you guys, you've got a can, or you've got powder, and my daughter got the 12-hour version, and it's perfect when it kind of gets jelly-like, and you put it on the counter, and perfect. She loved that, but she also liked something else that all Norwegian children like, a lot of Scandinavian children like, and even European children like, and that is a cookie, biscuit, called Marie cookie. And they are tasteless cookies, a lot like American animal crackers. She loved those. And I come into the kitchen and, of course, as a mother would do, yells at her child, "Åsa Marie, what are you doing?" And she looked at me quite a bit, she's still a little bit arrogant that way, and looked at me and said, "Mama, I am making cookie soup." Why is that important? Well, it's a definition of innovation, taking 2 seemingly unrelated things, putting them together to make something, create something meaningful, relevant, useful, and desirable for who? For Åsa Marie. So this was a definition of innovation. And the other thing I realized at that moment was that we are all born naturally creative and naturally curious. And we spend the rest of our lives getting that killed. The way we parent our children, the way we educate ourselves and our children, our workplaces, we destroy creativity and we destroy curiosity. And it was a horrible moment to witness this in myself and realize where we were and that we are born innovative. Think about that. All of us are. How many of you have yelled at your children because they were messing with things? Come on. All of us, thank you. At least 1 admitted it. 2 are admitting it. 3. Whoa. Fantastic. So I urge you to bring cookie soup back into your lives. I urge you to get smacked by your bosses because you chose to be curious and creative. If we're going to solve the problems we have today in this world, it's not by being obedient. Anyway, how does that play into this project at the airport? Well, curiosity, understanding the whys was very much a part of that, but I had to be extremely curious. Social intelligence was talked about a lot in this conference. And that's very important because that's really what it was about here. To make impact, I had to convince the sign king. He has done the same work for over 20 years. And let me tell you, change doesn't come easy. And he's totally competent. He makes beautiful signs. They just aren't meaningful and relevant to the people he's making them for. Well, he came out with me. This was taken by actually a journalist, and you can see there's a bit of tension. Can you feel tension? He stood with me, and he experienced the problems, and he was still stuck in the mindset of rules and regulations, and it took time for him to adjust with a new mindset. And he was a lamb once he felt he was listened to and heard. All I had to do, I didn't have to argue with him. I just had to listen to him. And as soon as he felt that he was understood, he let go and shook off the idea that some tiny little anthropologist was trying to overtake his job and his knowledge. And when the threat alert went down, he was one of the key ambassadors for change within the organization. I recognized all the 6 success factors for UX projects presented by Michael Deschenine, something like that, from USICON in my work with organizations. If you missed his presentation, you have got to get it. And this actually is really important because we do not work in a void in our organizations. We must work with them and facilitate knowledge and understanding. And that happens by being humble enough to listen and be on their side. Now let's move on a little bit. I talked about children. I talked about my own kids. At the age of 15, I met this man. This man, his name is Barry Mosier. I will see him next week again. Barry gave me a book when I was 16 years old. I was a big pain in the butt at that time. I went to a boarding school, and in this book there's a quote, which is, "There is no content of knowledge that is not relevant for the work you do." And he changed my life with this book. I don't have the time to tell you the whole story about it, but I go back and learn from him regularly because he has so much wisdom. And but it's this book that did it for me, and the relationship I have with him. And because all knowledge is relevant, I have learned to connect what did not seem relevant. And this connecting of the dots has become a trademark of the way in which I work and educate others. As I said, I'm going to see him next week so he can continue to share his wisdom with me. Now, what does connecting the dots look like? There are many aspects to it, and I liken it very much to zooming out and zooming in. Zooming out and zooming in, where zooming out is that helicopter view. And you can have whatever names you want on it. It allows us to see the connections between things and what happens if we begin to mess about in one area and what potential issues then arise in other areas. Because as long as we're too focused in one area, we lose perspective and we lose how it can affect the rest. And this is the map of the passenger journey from different perspectives. Visitor journey, people waiting for passengers to come. Dogs, we even follow the dogs. Other employees, lots of things. And this is a zooming in exercise where we went in and described every tiny little stage around the security line in order to change it to make it a more meaningful experience for the people who are being pushed through this. It is, in fact, the one point of contact that every single passenger goes through. And this is an example of mapping the entire experience through visual communication step by step. Whether you are coming to the airport to take an airplane, or whether you have landed at the airport to leave the airport to arrive in Oslo, or whether you're in transit. And it also points out all the different factors between the Schengen laws and European Union laws. And Norwegian still stand, it's amazing, in the wrong line because we're not part of the European Union, but we are part of an agreement which allows us to stand in the European Union line, but nobody does because they're so afraid of getting in trouble by the people. Now, my very first job in the field of user experience was at Boeing. And at this point in my life, I was educated as an anthropologist. I did my field work in Tibet, China, and Norway. And I was educated also as a clinical psychologist with a specialization in child and family therapy. I was hired as a psychologist to do a 40,000 passenger pilot and flight attendant survey on long hauls in order to apply the results to the design and development of new commercial aircraft. Well, I had a problem with the survey from day one. They gave me a lot of questions to work with. And I rose my hand in the first meeting and said, I really don't understand why you're asking these questions. What is this? Have you talked to passengers? Do you know these questions are meaningful and relevant to the passengers? And this was really my all-time first job. I didn't know what usability was. I didn't know what user experience was. I just came in as a psychologist to work on this survey. And the survey made no sense to me. And what I realized at that moment was the survey was written from Boeing's perspective and not, of course, from the passenger perspective or the pilot perspective or the flight attendant's perspective. And I pointed this out. And there were some grumblings in the group, but leadership decided, because I said, you want me on these planes, right? You want me time one to give out these surveys when people arrive on the plane and then during the flight and then just before landing so we can compare this data. It's very important quantitative data. And I said, well, if you got me on the planes, let me start observing, talking to the people. And they let me do it. And for this, I am eternally grateful for, because I learned a lot from it. I learned about different types of data and what it tells us. And in a very nutshell way, and I don't want to have a fight with anyone about this, but the easiest way for me to explain it is that quantitative data at best tells us what the passenger is thinking or what the passenger says they're doing. But the reason I say at best is, of course, still in the quality of the question. And qualitative data at best tells us why and how they do what they do or say what they do, and more importantly, why. There's a difference between what people say they do and what they really do, where the real fun is. Well, that project led to this project, and I returned back to Norway in 2010, and I was so lucky that Boeing called to let me know the plane that I had worked on came to Norway before it was launched, and I was able to go in and see the actual results of this qualitative and quantitative research project, and that was the Dreamliner. Thank God I'm not an engineer. One day, towards the end of the year, I worked for Boeing. I got a call from Microsoft, and they had heard Boeing had a design anthropologist. We know Microsoft likes to steal things, so they, of course, wanted to steal the design anthropologist. I'd gone in as a psychologist and came out as a design anthropologist. And I literally had no clue what Microsoft did. I didn't understand it. I didn't know what software was. But somehow I got the job. And it was at my tenure at Microsoft that I really began to understand what it takes to create meaningful and relevant solutions. And the road was not easy. My first project in the late 90s was to study people buying computers and setting them up in their homes and finding out what difficulties they had. And it was a real eye-opener. Among other things, I saw that fathers were not the main decision maker, as Microsoft thought, but the children were. And then I also found out something more problematic, that in the laboratories, in the usability laboratories where they had studied the setting up of computers and the internet, it took on average 3 hours. So I thought it would take about 6 hours to do this in people's homes, because that was the project. I had to do the out-of-box experience in people's homes. So I started doing this, and I was getting very bad results because, in fact, after 3 hours, 6 hours, 12 hours, 24 hours, nobody was able to do it. And after the first 5 families, I reported back on this. And, Houston, we've got a little bit of a problem here. And, of course, the response then was, where do you find these stupid people? And the second one was, what do you know? You're not a technician, you're an anthropologist. Well, they were right about that. I was also a psychologist, but, fair enough. I had gone in as a design anthropologist. But they were really wrong about those people. So I put my foot down. And this goes back to what I'm saying. If you don't fight it, we're going to end up with the same crap all the time. I put my foot down at the risk of losing my job. I said, I'm not going out anymore. I won't go out alone. There's no point. The only way I'm going to go out is if you guys come out with me. I want leaders out with me. I want product developers out with me. And the only rule is you keep your mouth shut because I don't want you ruining the data. But you are there to observe. And we had all sorts of timeout rules so that they could, when they couldn't take it anymore. Like one time I had asked somebody, what's that on a desktop? And I was asking about the taskbar. But I was like, what do you call that? Because I wanted to hear what they called it. And the developer went, ooh, I know, taskbar! So I learned quickly, lots of failing. But the end result was that I was allowed to create a program called Real People, Real Data, which was studying life stages and life events. I spent the majority of my tenure studying life stages and life events all over the world. And what is crucial for you to understand, it is not just in the front end innovation cycle. It is throughout the entire development cycle. It's not about just doing a little research in the beginning to get some insights so you get to do what you want to do. It's about bringing those people all the way through the product development cycle in order to ensure that we have actually met their real needs and not the needs of ourselves and not the needs of our company. So that's, I'm just noticing time, so I'm going to move a little bit quicker through it. This co-creation and involvement is the only way to ensure the quality of the products and services we create. And I'd like to remind ourselves that we are really at our best when we're facilitators and not experts. The squiggly line refers to the insights, and that we're constantly getting insight from the people, and that is throughout the entire cycle. To give you examples of this is a project that Making Waves did. It's a global project. Sports researchers had found data to get global researchers that they could reduce injury in athletes by 50% if they only did these little bitty exercises before they went out and engaged in their sport. And they weren't able to get people to do it, so they were really frustrated. And so we had an innovation jam. And in that innovation jam were the target group, which were the young athletes, their trainers, which were also a target group, along with the researchers. So the actual researchers were there. And then we call, in our company, we don't decide whether if you are a creative person but extremely pragmatic, if you're a designer, pragmatic, creative, you get to choose. If you're in technology, but you like the creative stuff more than you like just coding, you get to choose, but you placed yourself in the category of creative or pragmatic. And each team was based on that, and we discussed what, in groups, we had a competition. Competition is good. People like that. And we found out a lot of things. These are just examples of some of the things we found out and how we came up with ideas. And at the end, we even involved the global organizations that promote sports to sponsor the different services that were brought out of this project. Very, very exciting project. I can't tell you today what they are, but I will be able to tell you in just a couple of weeks when they are launched. A people-centered approach to problem solving is really all about minding and finding the gaps. And minding the gaps is about optimizing existing services and products where finding the gaps allows us to truly innovate. And why is this important? Because we live in the age of turbulence and we have very, very big problems to solve. We have globalization and shrinking worlds. We have the environment. We have healthcare issues. And the most important in my heart is maintaining a balance and keeping a balance between technology and humanity. Because all of this technology isn't only just good. We have to bring the people side in. And I believe it's our responsibility to constantly push the people aspect in order to balance this out. It's not about one winning over the other. I believe they're both good. They both serve us, but to find the proper balance. The biggest impact we have, of course, is the democratization of knowledge and the empowerment through dialogue in social media. We have, though, information overload, where we're drowning in data and thirsting for information. And I fear the biggest danger in society is fragmentation. And what is fragmentation? It is the loss of rituals in our everyday lives, whether it was our society house that we have in the village I live, which is hardly used at all anymore. It's where people came together and they did things together, whether it's the sewing bee or the reading clubs or the going out and taking a drink together or even going to church. Church, one of the most important aspects of religion is social cohesion. And when we don't have a replacement for church and for these things, the social cohesion falls apart. And I know we all know what I'm talking about, and I know we've all felt this in our hearts. But don't deny it, don't ignore it, and work with it. Because this is indeed what we see a little too much of. I'm sure all of you have used computers as babysitters in your homes, but it scares me when a child tries to open a newspaper. It actually scares me. We thought it was kind of funny, but don't they know how to open a newspaper or a magazine or a book anymore? This year, I was the chief examiner at the Design Academy in Norway, where the most provocative project, which I actually pushed through, that we had lots of discussions around it, was empathy furniture, designed for people locked in the virtual world. And he took a scenario in the future, however, based on the way people are behaving now. 3 years ago, just a couple days ago, is the anniversary of a young man who massacred a lot of children and bombed our government building. And he had zoned into the world also of virtual games, where he did, that's all he did for almost a year before he did this thing. I'm not blaming the technology on it, just so you're very clear. But these boys, they imagined a world where we no longer touch each other and no longer talk face to face, and what would happen. And they created furniture that was analog. There is no digital component to these. And the first one, you have to blow on something, and it's a latex form of one of the backs, and when you blow, it moves like a real body, and you can touch it and realize what it would be like to touch a human being. So it's the phase one. If you've been too much in the cellar with your data computer, then you come and you touch this machine, and it will help you, or this furniture, help you be able to touch another human being and not be afraid by it. The other one was to learn how to smile. And one of the things they noted, and believe me, these two boys, I think, were in the cellar a little too often, because they used the monotone voice. They were kind of geeky and monotone in their thing. And they made a machine that helped you say not just hi. How many of you have teens that do that? Yeah. Grunt. We have anyone who has teens who are grunters? Yes, thank you. I've had it too. It's okay. And so they recognize that as a symptom, and then teach you how to say hi, hi, hi. And those were the pieces of furniture they made. There's a reason they came up with this. And then what I didn't hear you guys talking about at all, and I really think we need to talk about, are the hopper offers. The people who don't buy into what we produce, who are refusing. They're young, very smart people. It is on the increase. From the last 20 years, I've watched this group grow the most. It used to be 40-year-old men who hopped off their careers, big crisis at that middle life crisis. But now, there are people who are refusing to join our companies because they don't want to be a part of it. And these young people were in the process of hopping off, and they were looking into ways to hop off. The other is that if all this technology and all of this stuff was so great, Matthias talked about, I got lost a little bit at the end of his presentation when he was talking about clothing manufacturing, because if what he was saying was so true, then why am I knitting? Why is my knitting? That was a picture. I took it upstairs in my room. I knit. I knit because I need to have my hands in making things, creating things. I have to do it. I feel better. And then there's a huge slow food movement going on. I'm nearing the end now. What are you doing to resolve fragmentation and social isolation in your products and services? I'd like you to just think about it. We have some very quick, I'm just going to run through a couple quick technology trends. Mobile phones as sensors. Soon we're going to be connected to everything. To me, big data is not something magical. It is not actually a technology, but technology is what gives us the possibilities of understanding connections we otherwise would not see. But the real news is not big data, but the struggle between big brother and big sister. Now, do not get mad at me for using gender terms. I did not come up with it. I did come up with big sister. I did not come up with big brother. We all know the term big brother and what it means. It's negative. It's about data being misused. And the real issue we have, and here's my way of thinking, is that if you use big data to better meet the real needs of your customers and potential customers, you will increase your share and people will perceive you as big sister. However, if you don't, if you use big data, if you use data cynically and manipulate it for your own advantage and to gain more sales, that's big brother. Same data used in different ways. And this is big sister. Big sister is benevolent use of technology that knows you, knows what you want and need, and guides you on a path of choice, making based on relevance and meaning. So it's guiding you. It's technology that guides us and is meaningful. If you are using this data just to get your sales numbers up, you will be viewed as big brother in the future. What stops us from creating meaningful, relevant, useful, and desirable solutions for the people we serve? It's quite simple. It's our blinders. And Einstein said that we cannot solve our problems using the same mindset that created them. I believe we need to look at people's basic needs. And the first is safety and security. What is your product and service doing to ensure this? And love and humanity. This is Pavel, who has lived through Theresienstadt and 3 years in Auschwitz. He told me the last time I had a conversation, I was making a documentary film, and he told me, please tell people that the only real thing that matters in life, and he's worked in public sector, private sector, done so many things after those horrible years, he says, is that we really just need to focus on love and humanity. And it gave me the courage to continue the work I do, because I believe in it. What is your product and service doing to ensure and promote love and humanity? We all want to be seen, heard, and accepted for who we are. And we need ways to move in and out of the chaos of our daily lives. Think simplicity next year. And we're motivated by the everyday heroes in our lives. And this is where I come back to the train company, because the train people, they are my everyday heroes. Reza on the right, he gives me coffee more mornings than not, because he notices when I'm really tired and haven't gotten the cup before I get on the train. And he comes over and says, I think you need your coffee. And he gives me a free coin to go get a coffee on the train on the way. So can we change our mindset? And what is the ROI of the people-centered approach? Because we've also talked about that at this conference. There is a return on investment, and I decided I would share it very, very quickly. This takes 2 minutes when I talk really fast. And it's a true story about the train commute that I have. Everybody loves this train, but there is something you need to know behind it, because this was how their earnings looked in 2010. They had gone from 2007 to 2010 to be quite minus. And it was really not looking good. And they had very poor customer satisfaction results. They were very low. And so the head of the train system, he said, can we have new tracks? Because they were built in 1902, which means the train is slow. The answer he got was no. That's no in Norwegian. Well, the trains, they were 35 years old. These trains are old. And he said, can we get new trains, please? And the answer he got back was no. So what could he do? Well, he could start with the people. And the first thing he understood was that there are 4 ways to look at passengers. One is that there are passengers who just are using the train to move from A to B or A to Z, and they're doing fine. And then there are the ones that are actually enjoying it. I take the train ride because as I go towards the city, I'm going towards my work. When I am returning home, I'm leaving my work behind. And it gives me this way to de-stress and not bring my work home with me. And then there are those that are frustrated or angry. And then there are those that are searching for information or something. And they understood that they need to move those 2 categories over. If they can just move the searching and the frustrated over, they'll be okay. And that's how he came up with his own hero plan. And there are, in every company, there are 3 types of heroes. You have real heroes, and those are people who do things outside of their little box. They're willing to take the risks and move outside that framework. And then you have the people who are potential heroes. They're the ones who see the ideas but don't dare take that leap of faith out and do something outside of that framework. And then finally, you have the anti-hero, and those we should all get rid of in companies instead of moving them between different parts of the organization, which is what we do way too much, and you all know, especially those of you who work in larger corporations, we do that. And they are the ones who ruin it not only for the passengers in this case, but also for the other employees. So what did he do? Well, he gave all his conductors amount of money that they could use any way they want, a small amount of money. And Reza, the one I told you about, he bought these tokens with that money so he could give them out to the passengers when he saw that they needed something. On Fridays, every Friday, the 4 o'clock train, you get beer and sausages, hot dogs. And this story is the most painful one for me to talk about, but it's the most beautiful for me. I was having a really bad time, and I was taking the train, but I wasn't my usual self. I wear lots of bright colors, so I was wearing a yellow jacket that day, and I wasn't talking. I wasn't sitting where I normally sit. And these conductors, they know where you sit. So they're like, what are you doing? Why are you buying that kind of ticket? You normally buy this kind of ticket. Very nosy, but very charming. And the conductor tried to speak to me, and I didn't really respond very well. And 2 seconds later, over the entire system, what do you call that system? The audio system? No, sorry? Yes, there's some kind of intercom, is that what it's called? Yeah. Came this message. Hey, everybody, good morning. Everybody, please, let's clap for the best dressed woman sitting up in seat so-and-so. She's wearing yellow today, and she needs to be cheered on. Well, I couldn't be very grumpy or sad then, could I? They have programs for children to learn on little mini apps where the conductors become teachers to teach about the environment on the way in to the city if they're going to the museum. And he has them welcoming us. Everyone welcomes us every day, not as traditionally as we saw with this old man I told you about, but they say hi to us every single day, each way. And then what I found out even more, this is the thing that really amazes me. The way they measure the quality of a train is by the mean distance to failure. And what it means is you've had a service on the train. How far can the train go before it breaks apart? And this is rather important when you have passengers who need the trains. Well, theirs is 140,000 kilometers. This is at the same level as Japan. This is not, they're the best in Europe, this little train service, old train. And for the Norwegian train service in general, it's 14,000. These guys are doing 10 times better. They're amazing. And he encourages them. There are only 10 people working on them. Well, what's the effect you're thinking? Okay, so the lady likes the train, and the people like it. Will this convince you? So in 2013, they made 35% more than they've ever made. This should convince you the most cynical of you. And look at this. They're at 73. They're actually higher. They're at 90 if you just look at the employees. The things that are outside of their control, drop it down a little bit. But they're at 90 when it's about the employees. And the thing I've realized is the passengers. What happens is not only do the employees, they're happier, but their happiness makes us happy. And guess what? Our happiness makes them happy. And so we have this merging thing going on where we are making everybody happy. And I like it. So I moved back to this community just to take the train every day. Qualities we need for this people-centric approach. Courage to fail forward, a humbleness to hear the wisdom of others, patience to be an active listener, trust in the power of the people you serve, and curiosity to think the unthinkable and create cookie soup. This is almost exact, whoever that is. If you're here, please clap for yourself. Legification of what they do, or why they do UX. And why they do it is because it's all about the people. And thanks to the creative activity by Spotless. So, at the very end, I'd like to say, please come dance with me and ensure the balance between technology and humanity. It saves lives, makes the world a better place, bit by bit, piece by piece, and let's make sure of that balance between technology and humanity. Thank you.